sleepy one. I'll be your storyteller tonight. Before we begin, please like and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And now, close your eyes. Let's begin. I always thought silence would save me. After the breakup, I told myself that all I needed was quiet. No arguments bleeding through the walls. No half-finished bottles of wine turning to vinegar on the counter. No ghost of a man's voice asking if I was okay, when we both knew I wasn't. So when the listing for Riverside Apartments appeared online, a modest one-bedroom on the east side of Portland with creaky floors and river fog that smelled like cold stone, I signed the lease within an hour. The place wasn't much, but it felt like a reprieve. The hallway smelled of lemon cleaner and old carpet. The mailboxes still had brass labels from the 70s. My unit, 2A, faced the courtyard, where a single maple tree leaned toward the sky like it was tired of standing. On my first evening, I unpacked the kitchen boxes and left the blinds half open so the amber glow from the parking lot spilled inside. "New tenant?" a voice called behind me. I turned to find an older woman balancing a laundry basket on her hip. "Yes, Lena Morell," I said. "Mrs. Trout," she introduced herself, breathing lightly. "Landlord. Welcome to Riverside. The building is quiet and primarily inhabited by retirees. You'll like it here." That was precisely what I wanted. Quiet. She pointed toward the unit across the hall. "That's Mr. Keene in 2B. Night photographer. Keeps to himself but a good man. Helps tenants move out when the stairs get too much for them." I smiled politely. "Sounds like a gentleman." "Oh, he is," she said, almost proud. "Been here longer than I have." The first time I saw him was 3 days later. I was carrying groceries up the stairs when a calm voice said, "Need a hand with that?" He appeared from the dim hallway. Mid-40s maybe, tall, with salt and pepper hair combed back neatly. He wore a wool coat even though it was mild outside and smelled faintly of cedar and something chemical, like film developer. "Thank you," I said, shifting the bags. He took 2 from me with practiced ease. "You're Lena, right? Apartment 2A, I blinked. "Yes, how did you—" He gestured to the mailboxes. "Saw your name earlier. Always good to meet the new neighbor." Inside, he set the bags on my counter. His movements were deliberate, almost graceful, like someone conscious of every inch of space he occupied. When I offered coffee, he declined. "I only drink at night," he said lightly. "Keeps me awake for work." "What kind of photography do you do?" "Night work," he repeated. "Cities asleep. Lights that don't know they're being watched." Something about the phrasing lodged in my chest, but I laughed softly. "That's poetic." He smiled. Thin, symmetrical. A smile rehearsed for the lens. When he left, the faint scent of cedar lingered. Days bled together. I worked remote design contracts from my couch, ordered Thai takeout too often, and tried to convince myself that solitude was healing. At night, I'd read until 2 or 3 a.m., my lamp casting a warm circle across the bed. Sometimes I'd hear the faint creak of floorboards from the hall, or the hum of pipes when someone showered late. Ordinary sounds, I told myself. One night, as I washed dishes, a soft knock came at the door. I opened it to Mr. Keene holding a small package. "This was left by the mailroom for 2A, he said. "Thanks." I glanced at the label. It was mine. He hesitated, as if wanting to say more. "Do you like music, Ms. Morell?" he asked suddenly. "I guess so." He smiled faintly. "I heard you playing Mazzy Star last night." "Into Dust, beautiful song." My stomach tightened. I had played that song once, alone, barely loud enough for me to hear. "You must have good ears," I managed. "Old walls," he said, tapping the frame gently. "They share everything." After he left, I turned off my lamp earlier than usual. But at 3:07 a.m., I woke suddenly, heart pounding, certain that something had clicked in the dark. Weeks passed. Portland's autumn bled gray. Rain hissed softly against the windows like static. I convinced myself I was imagining things. The faint shutter sound at night, the sense that someone was awake whenever I was. Still, small things began to unsettle me. My doormat, slightly crooked each morning. My toothbrush was damp when I hadn't used it. The cat, Miso, stared at the vent above the bed and hissed until his tail puffed like a brush. One evening, I met Mr. Keene again in the hall. He was locking his door, carrying a tripod. "Working tonight?" I asked, forcing a casual tone. "Always." He tilted his head, studying me. You leave your lamp on till 3:07 every morning. My throat tightened. How would you know that? He smiled mildly. The courtyard windows reflect your room. Light patterns are hard to miss. Right, I murmured, retreating toward my door. As it shut, I caught his whisper, too low to be certain, something like, "Keep the light on." That night I unplugged the lamp entirely. By November I was checking locks twice before bed. My friend said I needed therapy, not another move. "You're hypervigilant," my friend Mara said over the phone. "Breakups mess with your sense of safety." Maybe she was right. Yet the sounds persisted. The faint click-click from somewhere beyond the walls and the whir of something mechanical starting and stopping. One afternoon, Mrs. Trout knocked with rent receipts. I hesitated, then asked, "Has Mr. Keene ever had complaints? Anything odd?" Her brow furrowed. "Good man. Pays on time. Keeps to himself. Does he have access to maintenance keys?" She laughed softly. "He's helped people move out, sure. Folks trust him." Trust. The word tasted wrong. That night, Miso vanished. I searched every corner, every stairwell, and every vent. The hallway echoed my own voice calling his name. Mr. Keene's door remained closed, light visible under it like a thin golden wound. At 2 a.m., I slid a note under his door, "Have you seen my cat?" By morning, the note was gone, but no reply came. Sleep fractured into fragments. I'd drift off only to wake with the sense that someone had just left the room. My phone buzzed twice around 3 a.m. Unknown numbers, voicemail messages filled only with soft breathing. I went to the police. The officer's expression hovered between patience and disbelief. "Any evidence he's entered your apartment?" "No, but things move." "My toothbrush. Could be maintenance, cleaning staff, even humidity," he interrupted. "You mentioned sounds of a camera. Without proof, there's not much we can do." On the way home, fog rolled in off the river, swallowing the streetlights until everything looked underwater. When I reached my door, an envelope sat on the welcome mat. Inside, a Polaroid of my own front door taken from the courtyard. The blinds were half open. My shadow is visible behind them. I ran to Mrs. Trout's unit, pounding until she opened bleary-eyed. "Did anyone deliver this?" She frowned at the photo. "Strange. Maybe kids?" "Kids don't use Polaroids." Her eyes softened. "Honey, Riverside's old, but it's safe." "Maybe you're just... I'm not imagining this." My voice cracked. She patted my arm awkwardly. "I'll have the locks checked." She never did. The following nights blurred into each other. Rain, static. The faint hum through the vent was like whispering air. I began sleeping on the couch. TV low for comfort. Around 2:30 one night, I caught motion in the dark. Just a shimmer, as if light bent wrong near the vent. When I approached, the air was cooler there, metallic. I crouched, flashlight trembling, and something glinted deep inside. A tiny glass circle reflecting my eye back at me. Panic surged. I unscrewed the grate with shaking fingers and found a small black device wired to a cable that disappeared into the wall. A lens. I carried it straight to the police station. The same officer from before examined it. "Looks like a microcam," he admitted. "Where exactly was it?" "Behind my bedroom vent," he scribbled notes. "We'll check the adjacent units." Hours later, they called me back. The camera was connected through the wall to apartment 2B, but the unit's empty. Empty? What do you mean? "Mr. Keene moved out yesterday. Left the key in the drop box." I felt the world tilt. Did you find anything else?" The officer's expression shifted. Several tapes labeled with apartment numbers. One marked Lena Week 9. We're cataloging them. I signed a report with trembling hands, then packed everything I owned by sunrise. When I left, the hallway seemed to breathe. Each step felt watched. I relocated to a short-term rental in Northeast Portland. New locks, second-floor unit, no shared vents. For the first time in months, I slept without the lamp. Still, quiet carried weight. I'd wake expecting the click, the hum, and the whisper. It wasn't there, but absence has its own sound. 2 weeks later, a small brown package appeared on my new doorstep. No return label, no postage stamp. Just my name written in neat black ink. Inside was a single Polaroid. I'm asleep in my new bed, clutching that very photograph. And in the darkness behind me, reflected faintly in the window glass, stands a figure holding a camera, face half hidden, smile perfectly still. I woke up to the sound of my own teeth grinding. That dry, scraping click that used to make Owen laugh. He'd call it my midnight Morse code. Now it just echoes inside my skull, dull and endless, like something trying to chew its way out. The apartment feels smaller since he died. The walls breathe differently, heavier somehow, as if the air learned grief too. It's been 11 months since the crash, though it still smells like burnt rubber whenever I pass the intersection on 5th. I keep thinking I should move, but packing his things feels like killing him all over again. I still use his toothbrush for cleaning jewelry. I still talk to him sometimes, like he's in the next room, mostly apologies. People said therapy would help me learn to smile again. I told myself the day I first met Dr. Pierce. They were wrong. That afternoon, I was sitting in my car outside his office, watching raindrops race down the windshield. My jaw ached, locked tight as always. The pain had a rhythm now, a pulse that synced with guilt. I almost didn't go in, but then I saw his name etched in brass beside the door. Dr. Harlan Pierce, Ph.D., grief counseling, emotional recovery, behavioral reconstruction. Behavioral reconstruction. The phrase felt surgical. Maybe that's why I trusted him. Inside, the waiting room smelled faintly of sandalwood and antiseptic, clean but human. No receptionist, just soft piano playing from somewhere unseen. The lamp in the corner cast a warm cone of amber light, and I remember thinking it looked like late afternoon forever frozen in a jar. Then he appeared. "Ms. Bell?" His voice was calm, low like the start of a prayer. "I'm Dr. Pierce, come in." He was older, 60 maybe. Gray hair combed neatly back, pressed shirt, corduroy jacket. But it was his eyes that stayed with me. Kind, steady, the sort of eyes that made you want to confess things. I followed him into his office, past walls lined with books and photographs of smiling people. They looked genuine, not stock photo genuine, but lived-in genuine. We sat across from each other. He didn't open a file or ask for forms. He just watched me for a moment. "You've been carrying something heavy," he said. I nodded. "My husband. The crash." He raised a hand gently. "You don't need to rehearse it. Just breathe." That was our first exercise, breathing. He had me inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. I tried, but my jaw resisted, trembling with a dull ache. He noticed. "You hold grief here," he said, touching his own chin. "In the mouth. People think it's the heart, but no. Grief settles where words die." I didn't understand what he meant, but it sounded true enough. Over the weeks, our sessions became ritual. Tuesdays and Fridays at 5. I'd sit in the same chair, stare at the same framed photo of a coastline behind him, and try not to think of Owen's face through shattered glass. Dr. Pierce would guide me through breathing, posture, then, eventually, smiling. "We'll rebuild it," he'd say. "Your smile. Muscles remember what the soul forgets." Sometimes he brought a camera. "Progress tracking," he explained when I hesitated. "Visual therapy helps quantify healing." He always asked permission, but his voice carried that fatherly certainty that made refusal feel childish. He'd angle the light, adjust the focus, then instruct me softly. "Now show me how you used to smile." The flash was gentle, diffused by the lamp's amber glow. But each click echoed in me like a tiny fracture. Weeks passed. My co-workers at the dental office noticed I talked less. Even the hum of the polishing drill felt distant. Patients' mouths became abstract puzzles, teeth, gums, enamel. I moved through them mechanically, gloved hands, mint paste, rinse, repeat. But every time I glimpsed my reflection in the mirror, my lips seemed slightly off-center, stretched, as if they'd been practicing without me. Dr. Pierce started using phrases like emotional necrosis and muscular atrophy of joy. He said my expressions were stiffening into memorials. "I want to help you reclaim authenticity," he told me once. "Let me see what happiness looks like when it hurts." He tilted my chin upward, fingers cool but firm. "Wider," he whispered. "There, perfect." When the flash went off, I felt something inside me flinch, not from pain exactly, but recognition. That night I dreamt of mirrors filled with other faces wearing my smile. It was late October when I first lost time. I'd gone home after a session, lay down on the couch, and woke up 3 hours later with gauze in my mouth. My jaw throbbed, metallic taste flooding my tongue. I spat into the sink, Pink water, faint threads of white. I told myself it was sleepwalking. I'd probably clenched too hard, maybe bitten something. But then I found the disposable gloves on my kitchen counter, crumpled and powdered. I don't own gloves. At our next session, I tried to bring it up casually. I had a weird dream, I said. Felt like dental work. Dr. Pierce smiled faintly. Dreams are how the body rehearses healing. Did you feel relief afterward? I'm not sure, I admitted. I just felt empty. He nodded as if that were the correct answer. Then he adjusted the camera. This week, he said, we'll focus on symmetry. He dimmed the overhead lights and turned on a soft lamp near my face. The light hummed faintly. He positioned a mirror beside me. Look at yourself, he said. Don't analyze, just observe. What do you see? My mouth looks wrong, I whispered. In what way? Like it's remembering something I forgot. He smiled approvingly. Good, that's awareness. Now let's fix it. The click of the camera sounded like a metronome counting down to something inevitable. By December, I stopped visiting friends. I couldn't bear how they stared at me like I was unfinished. My best friend Lisa asked if I was losing weight. My cheeks felt tight all the time, skin stretched. Even yawning hurt. I brushed it off, told her stress was chewing me alive. At night, I caught myself standing in front of the bathroom mirror for long stretches, practicing smiles that didn't belong to me. Sometimes the corners of my lips twitched like they were following someone else's rhythm. That's when the email started. From CarPierceReconstructionClinic.com. Subject, Lesson 3, Grief as Form. Attachment, image Urondanje. The photo was of me, mouth slightly open, eyes half-lidded. The caption read, Improvement Visible. I deleted it instantly, assuming it was some automated progress tracker. But they kept coming. Lesson 4, Lesson 5, each with attachments. Close-ups of my teeth, my gums, the curve of my lips under different lighting. Notes scribbled in red ink along the edges. Tension reduced. Smile memory stabilized. Corner ratio extended 1.2 kilometers. I stopped opening them, but curiosity always wins over fear. By Lesson 7, I couldn't recognize myself. My smile looked painted on, too wide, too obedient. The night it all broke, snow was falling in heavy sheets. The city muffled itself, sound absorbed by white. My apartment felt colder than usual, and when I turned on the bathroom light, the mirror fogged over instantly. I wiped it with my sleeve. For a second, I thought someone else was standing behind me. My reflection lingered longer than it should have. The next day, I went to the clinic without an appointment. The receptionist's desk was still empty as always. I followed the faint scent of antiseptic down the hallway until I reached Dr. Pierce's door. It was unlocked. Inside, the lights were dim. No piano music this time. The air smelled metallic, almost like blood and developer fluid, the kind we used in dental x-rays. I called out his name. No answer. Then I saw the wall. Hundreds of photographs pinned in neat rows. Mouths, all mouths, mine at different angles, stages, expressions. Smiles too wide, gums exposed, teeth gleaming under harsh light. Each labeled in red ink. Week 2, minimal response. Week 5, encouraging strain. Week 9, elasticity achieved. My knees gave out. I pressed a hand to my jaw. Behind me, a door creaked open. Beautiful, isn't it? His voice was calm, almost tender. Dr. Pierce stepped out from a shadowed corner wearing latex gloves dusted with powder. His glasses caught the lamplight, reflecting my own distorted grin from the photographs. Why are you doing this? I managed. He looked genuinely puzzled. Doing what, Nora? You asked for healing. I gave it form. My throat closed. You've been operating on me. Not operating, he corrected gently. Refining. You couldn't smile anymore. So I helped your body remember. He reached for a folder on the desk and opened it, revealing sketches of a human mouth stretched beyond its natural curve, stitched at the corners. Smiles fade, but I've designed one that endures. I stumbled back. My jaw pulsed with heat. He sighed softly. Don't be afraid. You'll thank me. Permanence is mercy. I ran. The hallway warped as I moved, lights flickering, each bulb humming a different pitch. The exit door was locked. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. I could taste iron. Behind me, his footsteps were unhurried. "You'll tear the stitches," he said. "You'll ruin everything." I don't remember how I escaped. Only the sound of breaking glass, the rush of cold air, the city swallowing me whole. It's been 6 months since that night. I can't close my mouth. The corners of my lips are tethered too high, skin puckered into permanent mockery. The stitches dissolved weeks ago, but the scars remain, glossy and tight. Speaking hurts. Eating is worse. I drink through straws. I told the police everything, but Dr. Pierce vanished. Clinic emptied, records erased. The email address stopped working. Sometimes, though, my inbox pings with new messages. No sender, no subject line. Just attachments. Lesson 8. Grin forever. Lesson 9. Maintenance required. When I open them, the screen flickers. My reflection catches in the black gloss between frames, smiling wider than before. I tried smashing every mirror in the apartment, but reflections find their way back in spoons, windows, even puddles, and every one of them smiles first. At night, I dream of him adjusting lights again, whispering, "Wider, Nora, wider." I wake to the sound of my own teeth clicking, like a metronome marking time for a smile that refuses to end. I don't see patients anymore. The clinic fired me after too many complaints about my unnerving demeanor. They said children cried when I leaned over them. One kid told his mother, "She's wearing someone else's face." I wanted to explain, but my mouth won't form the words, so I just smiled. Now I keep the curtains drawn. I've taped over every reflective surface. Still, I feel watched, like a lens has replaced the air around me. Sometimes the TV turns itself on, static shaping into faint outlines of my grin. And once, just once, I heard his voice through it. "You're finally healing, Nora. I made sure your smile will never fade again." The screen flickered. Then an image appeared. Me, sitting exactly where I was. The same angle, same light. Only in the photo I wasn't blinking. I unplugged the TV. It stayed on for another 30 seconds. Now the hum never stops. Somewhere between the walls, behind the drywall or the vents, a faint electrical buzz sings like a camera warming up. Sometimes when I walk by the bathroom door, I hear the faint click of a shutter. I tell myself it's nothing. But each morning there are fresh prints slid under my door, high-gloss paper, the smell of developer still wet. My face caught mid-smile, annotated in red. Perfection sustained. I've stopped trying to hide. Maybe he's right. Maybe this is what healing looks like when it hurts. When I laugh, if that's what it is, the sound cracks dryly through the room, echoing against the walls like something rehearsed. And in that echo, beneath the brittle sound, I hear him whisper again, "Wider." I used to love working night shifts. The quiet felt clean, predictable, like the world was finally still enough to breathe. St. Meridian Psychiatric Hospital in Savannah, Georgia had that peculiar hum at night, fluorescent bulbs buzzing like trapped flies, distant air vents rattling, and the occasional echo of something shifting in the dark that no one wanted to name. I told myself I liked it because quiet meant control. But now I think quiet was just the absence of witnesses. My name is Ava Donnelly, 35, night nurse, 12 years at St. Meridian. The hospital sits at the edge of the city, where the Spanish moss thickens and the marsh air smells faintly of rot and sea salt. From the parking lot, you can see the water shimmer behind the tree line, reflecting the sodium yellow lights that never quite stay steady. I used to drink coffee on the front steps before my shift started, watching the glow flicker like the place was exhaling. Inside, everything was routine. Temperature checks, chart updates, meds. The walls were institutional beige, the kind of color that flattens everything it touches. I knew which tiles creaked and which patients faked sleep. Night shifts attract a certain kind of person, those who like silence or those running from something. I told myself I was the first kind. Room 313 was always locked. The sign on the door read, "Under evaluation." It had been that way since I started. Sometimes new hires asked what was inside, and the older nurses would just shrug. "Storage," they'd say. But the key never worked in its lock, and the small observation window was always covered from the inside. Once, years ago, I saw a light flicker under the door, just once, but no one else noticed. I convinced myself it was just reflection from the hallway. 2 months ago, they admitted Clara Holt, 24, history of self-harm, personality disorder, and what Dr. Kelman called persistent identity delusions. Her chart noted scars along both arms, like tally marks climbing toward her shoulders. When I first met her, she was sitting cross-legged on the bed, eyes wide and unblinking, hands folded neatly in her lap. "Evening, Clara," I said softly, checking her vitals. She smiled. Too easily. "You're Ava," she said. "I've been waiting to meet you." There's something about hearing your name from a stranger's mouth in that kind of tone. It lands differently. Like they already know the rest of your story. I forced a small laugh. "Well, that's convenient. I'll be your night nurse this week." Her head tilted slightly, eyes flicking to the left like she was following a thought. "You were humming when you came in." "I don't think I was." "You used to hum when your mom ironed," she said. "Remember? The sound of fabric crackling? You'd sit on the floor and match your breathing to hers." The pen slipped in my hand. "What did you just say?" Clara blinked once. "You look tired," she said, voice softer. "Don't stay too long in the halls tonight. It watches you when you do." After that, I told myself she was perceptive. Some patients are. They read faces, pick up cues, mirror back whatever they think you want to hear. It's how they anchor themselves. That's all it was. Still, when I got home that morning, I noticed the faint humming sound coming from my apartment. My mom used to hum that exact melody. I hadn't thought of it in years. I shut off the lights and stood in the dark, trying to remember if I'd ever done it in front of Clara. The next night, she was waiting, sitting upright, smiling like a child expecting praise. "I couldn't sleep," she said when I entered. "Too many footsteps." "None of us sleep much here," I said. "I do," she replied. "When I'm not pretending." "Pretending what?" Her eyes didn't blink. "To be you." I tried to laugh again, but it came out flat. "You're not me, Clara." "Not anymore," she said. "But I remember it. The color of your walls, the smell of the candles you light before bed. Cedarwood and vanilla." My throat went dry. I hadn't mentioned that to anyone. "Who told you that?" "You did," she said simply. "Before." That night, I stayed later than usual, rechecking her chart. It was thin. Admission notes, psych eval, a transfer authorization from another facility in Atlanta. But the transfer form was missing a signature. The line where the attending physician's name should have been was blank. At 3:17 a.m., the corridor lights flickered. I heard a door click open. Room 313's door. The sound was unmistakable. I froze. It was down the hall behind the nurse's station, that quiet stretch of linoleum that always smelled faintly of disinfectant and mildew. I called out, "Maintenance? Anyone back there?" No response. Just that steady hum of the lights. I walked slowly, flashlight trembling in my grip. The door to 313 was closed, sign crooked. For a second I thought I saw a movement under the frame, like someone shifting their feet. Then nothing. When I turned around, Clara was standing halfway down the hall. Her gown hung loosely, her arms bare. Her smile was still there, faintly lit by the flicker above her. "You shouldn't check on that room," she said. "Clara, how did you get out?" "I didn't," she whispered. "You did." By the time I blinked, she was gone. I found her back in her bed 5 minutes later, eyes closed, heart rate normal. The restraints were still clipped. The following morning, I mentioned it to Dr. Kelman. He frowned, scribbling something in his notes. "You've been working extra shifts, haven't you?" "Yeah, but lack of sleep can make the mind play tricks, Ava. These patients, they absorb energy. Project it back. It's transference." She knew things she couldn't. She's good at reading people. That's what her file says. It's what keeps her stable. Stable. I didn't feel stable. The next week blurred together. Sleep felt shallow, dreamlike. I'd wake up at home to find my bedside lamp turned on, or my toothbrush moved. Once my phone camera was open in the middle of the night, recording nothing but my empty living room for 47 minutes. I started forgetting small things. Passwords, shifts, where I parked my car. My coworkers noticed. "You okay, Ava?" they'd ask. "You look pale." One night, I found my own handwriting on a patient chart I hadn't touched. The signature line read Ava Donnelly, RN, neat and looping, but I hadn't filled that form. The date was 2 days ahead. When I confronted Clara, she smiled like she'd been waiting. "I'm helping," she said. "You're falling behind. Stop touching my files. They're not yours." "Then whose are they?" She leaned close, voice low enough that I could smell the sterile salt of her skin. "Mine. I just borrowed your name for a while." The tension in my chest turned to something sharp. "You need rest, Clara." She nodded. "We both do." That night at exactly 2:06 a.m., the hospital lost power. The emergency lights failed to come on. For the first time in 12 years, St. Meridian was completely dark. I grabbed my flashlight, heading for the generator room. The beam shook as I moved. Every step echoed back at me, doubled. When I passed 313, the door was ajar. The smell hit first, metallic, wet. My light found the outline of someone crouched inside. "Clara?" Her head snapped toward me, eyes catching the beam like glass. She was barefoot, the hem of her gown soaked. Something dark dripped from her fingers. "You're late for rounds," she whispered. "Room 313's waiting." My breath caught. "You shouldn't be here." "I never left," she said. "You did." When I stepped forward, the room came into focus, walls covered in medical charts, notes pinned like trophies. Every one of them had my name on it, my ID photo, my handwriting, my psych evaluations, pages upon pages of assessments written in looping, perfect cursive, each signed, Dr. Clara Holt. The flashlight slipped, beam scattering across the floor where my own photograph lay torn in half. The part with my eyes was missing. I ran. I don't even remember the sound of my footsteps, just the rhythm of breathing, ragged and uneven, echoing behind me, though I was alone. When maintenance restored the power, room 313 was empty. No blood, no files, no patient. The official report called it a misfiled transfer. Dr. Kelman told me to take a few weeks off. "Get some rest, Ava," he said kindly. "We'll sort it out." But he didn't see what I saw in the security footage they pulled. At 2:06 a.m., during the blackout, the hallway camera caught a brief flicker, one frame of movement before the feed cut. It wasn't Clara walking into 313, it was me. I don't remember doing it. Now, weeks later, I'm back at work. Everyone pretends nothing happened. Room 313's sign has been replaced, under evaluation. The door stays locked. But the night charts still get filled in, perfect handwriting, dated, signed. My name. Sometimes I find notes I don't remember writing. Patient exhibits dissociative behavior. Mirror responses noted. And before dawn, when the lights flicker like they always do, I see my reflection in the window. It blinks a heartbeat before I do. I don't check room 313 anymore, because I know who's inside. I thought it was the easiest job I'd ever take. Babysitting overnight one child. $150 in cash. That was the ad. No background check, no interview. Just a single line in an online job board for Lancaster locals. I'd scrolled past dozens of scams that day, my thumb raw from swiping, but something about that post stuck. Maybe it was the bluntness of it, or maybe it was because I was 3 weeks late on rent and desperate enough to ignore the warning signs. I'm Mara Quinn, 23, college dropout, part-time barista, full-time disappointment to my parents. The day I got the job, it was raining, thin gray drizzle that blurred everything. The world felt washed out, quiet. I took that as a sign things were calming down. I was wrong. The address was on a cul-de-sac near the edge of town, one of those neighborhoods that looked new but already felt abandoned. Lawns too neat, houses too similar, even the streetlights buzzed in unison, a sterile, synchronized hum. The Halbrook house was the last one on the lane, 2 stories, pale yellow siding, windows covered with heavy drapes. Light seeped through in dull, rectangular patches. The porch smelled like lemon polish and old rain. When Mrs. Halbrook opened the door, she was already holding the contract. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She looked like someone trying to remember how to be polite. "You must be Mara," she said, voice tight and rehearsed. "Come in." Her home was immaculate. No clutter, no warmth, A muted palette of beige and gray, the kind of silence that made you aware of your own breathing. There was a faint metallic tang in the air, like a penny pressed to your tongue. I wiped my shoes, nervous. "Thank you for having me." She nodded but didn't smile again. "The job's simple. My son Eli is 6. He's sensitive. He doesn't sleep well. You'll stay until morning." She handed me the contract. I skimmed it, expecting the usual liability nonsense, but one line stood out in bold type. "Do not let him see himself in the mirror." I looked up. "Is this some kind of sensory thing?" Her jaw twitched. "Just follow it. No exceptions." There was no humor in her tone. Just the kind of brittle authority people get when they've been scared too long. I nodded, signing without asking more. $150. One night. How bad could it be? Eli was in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the rug, stacking blocks with slow, deliberate care. Pale kid. Blonde hair so light it looked silver under the lamp. His eyes were gray too, washed out, almost colorless. "Hi, Eli," I said softly. "I'm Mara. Your mom asked me to hang out with you tonight." He didn't look up. "You shouldn't stay after the moon comes." I laughed nervously. "Why's that?" His fingers tightened around the block. "Because he comes then." I waited for the punchline. It didn't come. "Who's he?" Eli lifted his chin slightly and pointed toward the hallway mirror. A tall, old-fashioned piece of furniture with a carved wooden frame, the glass slightly warped. My reflection looked stretched, wrong. I told myself he was just a kid with nightmares. Maybe his dad left and he was some stand-in for fear. The usual story. Mrs. Halbrook came down the stairs with her purse in hand. "He's already had dinner. No sweets after 9. Keep him upstairs after midnight." "Got it. And don't cover the mirror." Her words caught me off guard. Wait, the rule said not to let him see himself. So she hesitated. "Just don't touch it. Leave it how it is." Before I could ask more, she was gone. Her car disappeared into the fog. For the first few hours, it was normal enough. Eli and I played cards, watched a cartoon, and by 10 he was yawning. I tucked him into bed, left a nightlight on, and scrolled my phone downstairs until the house grew still. That was when I noticed it. The sound. Whispering. It started faint, like a TV on in another room. I muted my phone, listening. It was coming from the hallway. Eli's voice. I climbed the stairs, heart tight in my chest. "Eli?" He was sitting on the floor by his doorway, facing the mirror. "Hey," I said gently. "It's late, buddy." He didn't turn. His lips were moving, whispering softly. I realized he was repeating something, his own words echoed back a half-second later. But the second voice wasn't his. It was lower. "Eli, come on, let's go back to bed." He finally turned toward me. His eyes reflected the hallway light strangely, like there was glass between us. "He says you shouldn't talk to me," he murmured. "Who says that?" "The one behind you." I spun around. The hall was empty, just my reflection in the mirror. My reflection and something behind it. The glass looked fogged, like breath from the inside. I stepped forward, reaching out to wipe it, but before I touched it, Eli screamed, a sound so sharp it made me flinch. The lights flickered, then went out completely. "Eli!" I called. I grabbed him, clutching him close. He was trembling so hard his teeth chattered. I could hear movement from the hallway. Soft, deliberate steps that weren't mine. When my phone's flashlight came on, I pointed it toward the mirror. For a moment I saw hands pressed against the glass. My hands, but they were inside. Pale, reversed, fingertips smeared against the surface as if something was trying to get out. The air felt heavy, thick with static. The light flickered again. The hands were gone. I scooped Eli up and ran upstairs to his room, slamming the door. I called Mrs. Halbrook. She answered immediately, no greeting. "Don't move him," she said.
"Do not move him. What's happening?"
"There's someone. Don't let him near a reflection. He'll follow it. Just stay still. Keep your eyes shut until morning." Her voice cracked on the last word. Then the line went dead. I held Eli close, whispering that it was okay, that it was just a bad dream. But the boy didn't blink. He just stared at the wall and whispered, "It's not a dream for him." The rest of the night stretched like wet paper. Every creak sounded like breathing. At some point I must have blacked out because the next thing I knew, sunlight was leaking through the curtains. The mirror in the hallway was cracked through the center like a frozen scream. Eli was gone. I tore through the house, closets, attic, basement. Nothing. The only sound was the wind. When Mrs. Holbrook came home around 7, she looked calm. Too calm. She carried a small boy in her arms. Same blonde hair, same eyes. "This is Eli," she said simply. I stared at her. What do you mean?" "Eli's gone." She tilted her head. "You must be tired." I pointed at the crack in the mirror. "Something happened last night. That thing, whatever it was." "You signed the contract," she interrupted. Her tone had the finality of a closing door. "You did well. Payment will be in your account by noon." That was the end of it. She turned away, leading the boy, Eli or someone like him, into the living room. I left before I could see his face again. Outside, the morning looked too bright. I got into my car, hands shaking, and started the engine. I kept telling myself to forget it. Just drive. But then I caught movement in the rearview mirror. A small shape in the back seat. At first, I thought it was a trick of light. Then I heard it soft whispering my name. Over and over like a lullaby unraveling. "Mara. Mara." I didn't turn. I couldn't. My eyes stayed locked on the road even when tears blurred the view. The whispering got louder, closer, until it wasn't just a sound but a vibration crawling under my skin. I glanced up once, just once, and saw his face. Pale. Perfect. Eyes like dull glass. He smiled. Then the mirror cracked, thin fissures spreading like veins. The whisper stopped, but when I blinked, I realized my breath had fogged the glass from the inside. I signed up to help people. I didn't expect to meet the one who would destroy me. When I filled out the volunteer form for Edenvale Correctional Facility, I imagined redemption stories, second chances, maybe a few tearful confessions I could tell my professors about later. I didn't expect the smell. That sterile metallic scent that clings to concrete, bleach, and people who've forgotten what rain feels like. The first time I stepped inside, I felt the air shift. Dense. Watchful. I'm Rachel Dunn, 29, psychology grad student at SUNY Albany. And for 6 months, I've been volunteering as a counseling intern at Edenvale. Every Thursday, I'd drive 2 hours upstate, sip burnt coffee from the vending machine, and sit across from men who'd traded their freedom for one bad decision too many. Most of them barely looked at me. Some cried, some flirted out of boredom. But it always ended the same way. "Thank you for listening, Miss Dunn. See you next week." Then came inmate DeForo29, Caleb Voss. No priors. No listed address. Arrested for walking uninvited into a suburban family's dining room and sitting at their table until police arrived. No threats, no weapon, just silence. When they asked why he did it, he said he was waiting for Rachel. My name. When the warden told me that, I laughed, a shaky sound I immediately regretted. Probably a coincidence, I said, though the word tasted like dust. The first time I saw him, he was already smiling. They brought him into the counseling room, a small, windowless cube with a metal table and 2 plastic chairs. He was tall, maybe early 30s, with dark hair that looked too clean for prison, and eyes that held something, calm but wrong. Not insanity, familiarity. "Good morning," I said, setting my clipboard down. "I'm Rachel." "I know," he said quietly. It wasn't flirtation or mockery. He said it like a fact. I forced a smile. "You must be Mr. Voss." "Caleb," he corrected. "You don't have to pretend we haven't met." "We haven't." He tilted his head, studying me. "You've changed your hair. You used to tuck it behind your ear when you were nervous." I froze. My hand twitched toward my hair before I caught myself. "I think you're mistaking me for someone else." He smiled wider. "No, Rachel. You just don't remember." The way he said it, calm, patient, certain, made the room feel smaller. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Let's talk about why you were in that house." He leaned back, eyes half-lidded. "I was waiting for you to come back." For the rest of the session, he barely spoke. Just watched me, head tilted like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. When I ended early, he whispered, "Thursday's too far away." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words, that voice that lingered just a little too long on my name. My apartment was dark except for the glow of my laptop. I checked the volunteer roster. No one else named Rachel. I called my mom, tried to sound casual, asked if she'd ever heard of a Caleb Voss. She hadn't. At 3:12 a.m., my phone rang. No caller ID, I answered without thinking. Static. Then my name whispered slow. Rachel. I hung up, heart hammering. The call log showed nothing. The next morning I told the warden what happened. He looked exhausted, rubbing his temples. He doesn't have access to a phone. Inmates don't get personal calls. Then how? It was probably a prank, Miss Dunn. Don't let him get to you. But that was the problem. He already had. By the next Thursday, I'd convinced myself it was nothing. Coincidence. Misheard static. But when I entered the counseling room, Caleb was already speaking under his breath, low and rhythmic. What are you saying? I asked. He stopped mid-sentence. You dream about lakes, I stared. Excuse me? You talk in your sleep, he said. Loud. I felt cold all over. How could you possibly? You shouldn't leave your window open. I stood up so fast the chair screeched against the floor. Session's over. As I walked out, he called after me, still calm. I just wanted to finish the song your father never did. I didn't even turn around. But that night I remembered it, the lullaby. The one Dad used to hum before he left. I hadn't thought of it in 20 years. At 3:12 a.m. the phone rang again. This time I let it. The static hissed in waves, then a low hum, soft, almost musical. The lullaby. The next week Caleb's cell was found empty, no broken locks. No open windows. The security feed froze at 3:12 a.m., the same minute my phone had rung every night that week. The warden said it was a technical failure. He looked pale when he said it. The news spread through the facility like rot. Inmates whispering, guards double-checking gates. I stopped volunteering, told myself I needed a break. But my phone still rang. Same time, same silence. 2 days later, I found an envelope in my campus mailbox. No return address. Inside, one piece of paper. Thank you for letting me out. No signature, but I recognized the handwriting. It was mine. I took it to the campus police. The officer squinted, unimpressed. Could be a sick prank. You got any exes? I left before he could finish. That night, I pushed my dresser against the window and slept with the lights on. Around 3 a.m., I woke to soft knocking. Not loud. Delicate fingertips. I told myself it was branches, wind, anything but what it sounded like. But then I saw my reflection in the window. It smiled before I did. I stumbled back, heart slamming, staring as the reflection's lips moved slightly out of sync. It mouthed something I couldn't hear, 3 syllables, slow. Then it leaned closer and I realized the breath fog on the glass was coming from inside. When I looked again, it was gone. I stopped answering my phone. I started leaving campus before dark. I told my professors I was sick, that the drive was too much. But the world didn't stop bending. I'd see Caleb's shape in crowds, a flash of his gray sweatshirt reflected in passing windows. At the grocery store, in my rearview mirror, in the glass of the bus shelter, always watching, never there. My mother visited once. She said I looked tired. You should talk to someone, she said, meaning a therapist. I am, I almost said. But the words caught. That night I recorded myself sleeping just to prove I was imagining things. When I played it back, there was silence for hours. Then at 3:12, a soft creak. A voice, mine, saying, "He's here." Then another voice layered beneath it, identical but deeper. "Thursday's too far away." I smashed my phone against the floor. The next morning, someone had taped a note to my door. Stop fighting it. I knew the handwriting before I even touched it. The police came again after I reported a break-in. They found no forced entry, no fingerprints, no sign of disturbance. The officer looked at me carefully. "You sure you're okay, Miss Dunn?" I wasn't sure of anything. The nights bled together after that. Sometimes I'd wake and find my notebook pages filled in my own handwriting. Except it wasn't mine anymore. Letters tighter, sharper, words I didn't remember writing. He lives in the silence between. I started sleeping on the couch, facing away from the window. Once I woke up to humming behind me. The lullaby. I turned slowly, breath shaking. The window was closed. My reflection stared back, still empty-eyed but smiling faintly like it pitied me. I whispered, "What do you want?" Its lips moved. "To stay." And then the glass cracked. Now I don't sleep much. My professors think I dropped out. My friends stopped calling after I stopped answering. Every night 312 comes and goes and I sit in the dark listening, waiting. Sometimes I hear knocking again. 3 soft taps like the start of a song. Sometimes the phone rings and I almost answer. Sometimes when I speak the words come out too smooth, too low, too much like him. My reflection still smiles before I do. And when I try to sing, it finishes the lullaby for me. I used to believe that working in other people's homes was safer than living in my own. It sounds naive now, but cleaning for strangers always felt like control. Other people's messes were predictable. Dust, clutter, wine stains, secrets that stayed silent in drawers. My own life was the chaos I couldn't scrub out. Cleaning gave me order, quiet, the illusion of being invisible in someone else's story. I'm Camille Hart, 37, professional housekeeper in Burlington, Vermont. Most of my clients lived around the lake, second homes for New Yorkers with too much money and too little time. They liked me because I was discreet, efficient, and forgettable. They could leave me in their bedrooms, their safes, their lives, and I'd vanish without a trace when the job was done. That was before the Langfords. Their house sat on the North Shore, 3 stories of glass and dark wood that caught the lake's reflection like a mirror. When I first arrived, the drive up the winding private road smelled like pine and rain. The air was so still it felt suspended. Mr. Langford greeted me at the door, smiling politely, one hand in his pocket. "Mrs. Langford's inside," he said. "She's not feeling well, but she wanted to meet you." He was the kind of man who filled silence easily, his voice low, deliberate, too controlled. His face never fully relaxed when he smiled. Everything about him was precise. Mrs. Langford was sitting by the picture window overlooking the lake. Thin, pale, fragile in that way that makes people call you delicate instead of dying. She looked up at me with watery eyes and said softly, "Thank you for coming. I'm so sorry the house is not what it should be." It was immaculate. "You'll find everything in the supply room," Mr. Langford said. "And one thing, Ms. Hart, please don't touch the locked closet in our bedroom." I nodded because clients always had boundaries. I didn't ask questions. That was part of the job. But even from the first day, the closet unsettled me. It was at the far end of the master bedroom, behind a heavy oak door, the kind of lock that looked older than the house itself. When I vacuumed near it, I could feel the faint vibration under the floorboards, a hum so low it seemed alive. Mrs. Langford caught me looking once. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't open it. Ever." I told her I wouldn't. I meant it. Still, every time I passed that door, I thought I heard something. Breathing, maybe. A faint shift of air that didn't belong to an empty space. A week later, while dusting, I knocked my duster against the frame. From the other side, something knocked back. Once. I froze, waiting. Then, another softer tap. When I asked Mrs. Langford about it, she looked terrified. "Don't tell him," she whispered, "please. He doesn't like when I talk about it." "Who?" I asked, but she didn't answer. Instead, she pressed a small brass key into my hand. "If I disappear," she said, "clean it out. Burn everything." That night, I lay awake thinking about her voice, how desperate she'd sounded, how the key had felt warm against my palm like it had been held too long. The next morning, Mrs. Langford was gone. Mr. Langford said she'd gone to stay with her sister in Montreal. He smiled as he said it, as if rehearsed. The police confirmed it. No foul play, just a missing person with a passport and a history of anxiety. He gave me a raise the same day. "Things will be quiet for a while," he told me. "I appreciate your loyalty." Loyalty. I didn't know what he thought I owed him, but something about his tone made me stay longer than I should have. Days passed, and the house felt heavier. The lake smell seeped into the hallways, damp, metallic like old coins. The humming behind the closet door grew louder. I stopped vacuuming near it because the floor trembled under my feet. I told myself to quit, to leave the key where it was, to mind my business. But curiosity isn't something you can scrub away. One afternoon, I used the key. The door opened with a sigh, as if relieved. Inside, the smell of bleach hit me first, sharp enough to sting. There were gloves, rolls of duct tape, folded rags. On a low table, a black dress still warm. My fingers brushed the fabric. It pulsed faintly like heat from skin. Then I saw the shelf. Dozens of Polaroids neatly arranged. Women all wearing the same black dress, standing in front of the same lakefront window. Blank expressions, eyes unfocused. Every one of them wore the same gold bracelet, the same one on my wrist, a gift from Mrs. Langford my first week. I stumbled back, bile rising. My shoulder hit the door and it swung wider, creaking. Behind it, something shifted. A faint click. Then another. Polaroid cameras, all of them pointed at me. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and ran. That night, I packed my things, determined to leave. But when I reached the door, Mr. Langford was standing there, coat draped over his arm, smile easy as ever. "Going somewhere?" he asked. My mother's sick," I said, voice breaking. He stepped closer, closing the door behind him. "You clean so well, Camille. It's hard to find people like you. Mr. Langford, you'll make a fine addition." He said it like a compliment, like a promise. I tried to push past him, but his hand shot out, gripping my wrist. The gold bracelet cut into my skin. "Where is she?" I demanded. "What did you do to your wife?" He smiled, too close now. "You should see the closet." The next thing I remember is the sound of the lake, soft waves slapping against the dock. I must have run, or fallen. I woke up in the guest room, sunlight already dimming. My clothes were damp, my bracelet gone. The closet was locked again. When I called the police, they told me no one by the name Langford owned property on the lake. The address didn't exist in their records. But every week, my paycheck still arrived. Same envelope, same amount, same return address. I stopped cashing them months ago. Sometimes, I drive past the house just to see if it's real. It always is. The window's dark. The same hum I can almost hear from the car. Last week I saw movement inside. Someone dusting the staircase, slow and careful. A new housekeeper, young blonde, wearing a gold bracelet. When she paused to adjust a picture frame, I saw it clearly. My face frozen in a Polaroid behind glass. My own eyes staring back at me from the hallway wall. And just for a second, she looked toward the master bedroom door, head tilted, like she'd heard something knock from the other side. I wanted to warn her. I wanted to scream, but my throat only filled with static. Now, when the night wind comes off the lake, I feel it press against the closet door, the hum rising until it feels like breath. The keyhole glows faintly with light. I watch her through it, the new housekeeper, dusting, folding, humming. I'm waiting for her to hear the knock. I never believed evil could hide behind a polite smile and a clipboard, but that was before Mr. Greer walked into my classroom. It was a Monday morning in late September, the kind of crisp Tennessee day when the air feels cleaner than it should. Like a trick before the cold sets in, I was running late. Coffee spilled on my blouse, lesson plans half-printed, the usual chaos that comes with wrangling 21st graders at Redwood Elementary. When I reached my room, he was already there. "Morning, Miss Hensley," he said, smiling. "Principal told me to get settled while you parked." He looked ordinary in the most unnerving way, khakis, button-down, neat haircut. The kind of man you forget as soon as he walks by. Yet his smile lingered, stretched just a little too long. He was holding a clipboard, pen poised like he was already taking notes. I should have been grateful. Substitute teachers were hard to find, especially mid-year. But the moment his eyes met mine, something in me stiffened. His gaze didn't feel like looking, it felt like reading. The kids adored him instantly. Within an hour, he knew every name, favorite color, and what each one wanted to be when they grew up. He performed simple magic tricks between lessons. Coins behind ears, rubber bands through fingers. They shrieked with laughter, crowding him like he was some kind of hero. I wanted to like him. God, I did. I wanted to believe he was just another overqualified, underpaid man doing his job. But the way he watched people, me especially, it felt rehearsed. Like he was following a script only he could see. That first day he borrowed my classroom key. Just for the day, he said, smiling again. The janitor locked up the supply closet early. I didn't think much of it until the next morning. My desk drawers had been rearranged. Neatly. Obsessively. Paper clips sorted by size, pens lined up. My mug moved half an inch to the left, and my spare lipstick, and the one I kept buried under a stack of worksheets, was open, smeared. When he saw me later, he said, "That's a lovely scent you wear, Miss Hensley." "Lilac, isn't it?" I froze. I only wore perfume at home. That night, I went through every room in my apartment, double-checking locks. I told myself I was being paranoid. Still, I placed a chair against the front door before bed. By Wednesday, even the janitor, Harold, had noticed something strange. "Hey, Miss Hensley," he said as I packed up. "You been working late?" "No, why? Light's been on in your room after midnight all week. I figured you were grading papers or something." My stomach turned. I drove back that night, flashlight in hand, to check. The building was dark except for the faint glow from under my classroom door. When I opened it, the lights flickered once, then went out completely. The next day, I asked to see the security footage. The tech guy, Craig, frowned at his screen. "That's weird. Every clip between midnight and 3 a.m., corrupted. Like someone wiped them clean. Can you restore them?" He hesitated. "You sure you want me to?" The way he said it made my skin crawl. The following week, Mr. Greer started giving the kids gifts. Tiny wooden animals, rabbits, foxes, owls, hand-carved, he said, from good oak. The children loved them, clutching them like treasures. But when I looked closer, I saw the initials. Each carving had a child's name etched underneath, and mine, LH, carved deeper than all the rest. "Did you make these?" I asked. He smiled. "Of course. Teaching's a craft, Miss Hensley. I just like leaving something behind." Something behind. That night I dreamed of my classroom door opening. A hand, his, setting one of those carved animals on my desk, pressing its tiny wooden paw into the surface until it left a mark. By morning, I was shaking. I told the principal, Mrs. Jennings, that I wanted him gone. "He's making me uncomfortable," I said. She sighed. "Lauren, the kids adore him. He's temporary. Just until Mr. Wallace's surgery recovery. A few more weeks tops. He's been in my room after hours." Her smile faltered. "Do you have proof?" No, I didn't. That Friday we had a field trip scheduled. 2 buses. I took bus 1, Mr. Greer took bus 2. We were headed to the Knoxville Zoo. I checked the roll call twice before departure. 20 children total. My group pulled out first. His bus never arrived. By noon, the zoo staff started asking questions. By 2, the police were called. They found the bus abandoned 2 towns over, parked near a rest stop. All 20 seats empty. No Mr. Greer, no children. My purse sat on the dashboard. They said the onboard camera feeds failed. Corrupted again. The next few days blurred. Search teams, interviews, tears that didn't feel real. Everyone asking the same thing. "What do you remember, Miss Hensley?" I didn't know how to answer. The police suggested trauma, blackout, but there were flashes, faint impressions like film negatives burned into my skull. The hum of the bus engine. A child's laugh cut short. The smell of sawdust. Then, darkness. The school shut down for a week. Grief counselors came and went. Parents blamed me and I couldn't blame them. I blamed myself too. A week later, the first letter arrived, postmarked from nowhere. Each envelope addressed to a child's family, each written in the same looping handwriting. "Miss Hensley is learning new lessons. She's smiling now. The police called it a hoax. People do sick things for attention," the detective said. But I knew that handwriting. I'd seen it on the corner of every carved animal. For months I avoided mirrors, turned off my phone, ignored the knocks at my door at night. My dreams were filled with whispering voices counting to 20 over and over. Then last night I drove past Redwood Elementary for the first time since it happened. The parking lot was full. A new substitute had started. I sat in my car, engine idling, watching through the window. He stood at the front of my old classroom, smiling. Same posture, same calm voice, same eyes. When the children laughed, I could almost hear their echoes from that bus. I got out, my legs trembling, drawn toward the building like a moth to a flame. The air smelled of rain and chalk dust. Inside, the halls looked smaller, fresher paint, brighter lights. My classroom door was open. The wall behind my old desk had been repainted pale blue, but under the light I saw it, faintly carved beneath the new coat of paint. Attendance: 20. My breath caught. My reflection in the window smiled before I did. Somewhere deep inside the building, I heard the sound of a bus engine turning over, and a man's voice. Warm and familiar calling roll. "Lauren Hensley?" My lips moved before I could stop them. "Present." I used to think loneliness was my biggest fear. Then I met someone who loved it more than I ever could. I'd been caring for other people's parents for almost 2 decades when I took the job at the Caldwell estate. Live-in caretaker, nothing new, nothing dramatic. A week before, I'd left a nursing home position after a resident died during my shift. Heart attack, they said. But I'd been the one to find her body. Her hands still clutching the air like she'd tried to hold on to something that wasn't there. So when Dr. Thomas Caldwell called about his father, I told myself this would be quieter work, solitude and structure. That's all I ever wanted. Barrow Hill, Maine is one of those towns that looks like it's dying politely. Fog seeps in from the harbor. The air smells like iron and pine, and the houses are so far apart you can almost hear your thoughts echoing. The Caldwell house stood at the top of a slope. Gray shingles, 2 stories, the kind of place that should have been cozy but felt like an apology instead. When I arrived, the driveway was lined with wet leaves. The front porch sagged slightly. Inside, the air was cool, not cold but unnaturally still, like the house was holding its breath. Dr. Caldwell met me in the foyer. Early 40s, handsome in that brittle, sleepless way. His voice was soft, measured. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Monroe." "Elise, please," I said. He smiled faintly, not quite meeting my eyes. "You'll find my father upstairs. He's mostly bedridden, doesn't speak much anymore. Meals at 6 and 10. Sheets changed every other day. Oh," he paused, glancing down the hallway. "One thing, don't move the clock." I followed his gaze. The clock stood against the far wall, taller than me, carved from dark oak, its pendulum gleaming like wet brass. Faces were etched into the wood, tiny indistinct expressions caught mid-scream or mid-song. I couldn't tell which. "Why not?" I asked. "It keeps the house in rhythm," he said simply, and walked away. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, listening. The house creaked in the kind of rhythm that made you think of footsteps. Every hour the clock chimed, not a clear, bright sound but a heavy metallic groan, like it had to force the noise out of itself. At midnight it struck 13 times. I sat up. Heart pounding, 13 I counted slowly, each chime deeper than the last. When the final strike faded, I heard movement. The faint rustle of sheets from Mr. Caldwell's room. I grabbed my robe and hurried upstairs. He was lying flat, eyes open wide, pupils huge and clouded. His mouth moved, soundless at first, then barely a whisper. "He's home." I told myself it was dementia, hallucination. 93 years old, nearly blind, confused. I soothed him, checked his pulse, adjusted his blankets. But even after I turned off the lamp, he kept staring toward the doorway, his lips trembling in a soundless rhythm that matched the pendulum's swing. The next morning, I mentioned it to Dr. Caldwell over breakfast. He stirred his coffee, not looking up. He talks in his sleep sometimes. He wasn't asleep. Then he was dreaming. Something in his tone, too even, too polished, made me stop asking. Days passed. The weather worsened. Wind rattled the windows at night like impatient hands. The house grew colder, though the thermostat stayed fixed. Mr. Caldwell never spoke again, but every night when the 13th chime came, his eyes would snap open. And I began to hear it too, the faint, deliberate sound of footsteps upstairs. The problem was, no one was supposed to be upstairs. My room was on the main floor, his next door the doctor's office down the hall. The second floor was for storage, he'd said, but sometimes I'd hear drawers open, a chair scraping. On the 4th night I called out. Dr. Caldwell? A pause. Then a calm, distant voice answered from above. It's just the caretaker. My stomach went cold. I'm the caretaker, I whispered. The footsteps stopped. The next morning, I asked Dr. Caldwell if anyone else lived there. No, he said too quickly. Just us. Then who's upstairs? He smiled. You're overtired, Miss Monroe. The house is old. It creaks. I almost believed him, until I found the needle and thread. It was on the nightstand beside Mr. Caldwell's bed. Silver thread, taut and stained dark near the tip. His lips had small red marks at the corners, healing punctures like something had once been sewn shut. When I asked the doctor, he said nothing. Just looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Don't go into the attic." That night I didn't sleep at all. The clock ticked too loudly, each swing echoing in my chest. At midnight I crept into the hall, flashlight in hand. The pendulum gleamed as it moved, the carved faces catching light in flickers that looked like breathing. At the first chime, I froze. At the 13th, I heard something else. A second chime. From upstairs. 2 clocks, keeping time together. I climbed the stairs slowly, flashlight shaking. The air grew colder with every step. At the landing, a smell hit me. Sweet, chemical, unmistakable. Formaldehyde. The attic door was half open. Inside, the light bulb buzzed faintly. And in the center of the room, sitting perfectly still in a rocking chair, was Mr. Caldwell. His skin was gray and waxy. His hands folded neatly in his lap. His eyes half-lidded, and stitched across his mouth. Black thread, knotted tight. He'd been embalmed. Behind me, the floor creaked. I turned. Dr. Caldwell stood in the doorway, holding a needle and a fresh spool of thread. His face was calm, expressionless. He didn't like when people moved the clock, he said softly. The rhythm keeps him content. I stumbled back. He's dead, Thomas. Everyone here is. He said it like it was a kindness, like it explained everything. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember running. Just the sound of the clock downstairs striking once, twice again, until it felt like the whole house was breathing with it. When I woke, it was morning. The attic door was shut. The doctor was gone. The police found no trace of embalming fluid, no body, no attic chair. The clock was still there, pendulum swinging. When I tried to explain, they looked at me with pity. Grief response, one said. Caretakers get attached. I quit the job that day, packed what little I owned, left Barrow Hill. But sometimes at night when I can't sleep, I hear it. The same slow rhythm in the walls. Tick, swing, breathe. Last month, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside, a small brass key. And a note. You forgot to wind the clock. Now I live alone again. Different town, smaller house. I keep telling myself I won't use the key, that it doesn't fit any door I own. But last night I heard something upstairs. A chair creaking in time with the wind. And when I checked the corner of my room, I realized my reflection in the window was moving just a half-second too slow, as if waiting for the next chime. 13. Always 13. I think I finally understand what he meant about the rhythm. It's not the house that needs it. It's me. I never trusted the sound of humming through walls. It started as a faint vibration, a whisper under the hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic, the creaks of my old Denver duplex. The kind of sound you could almost convince yourself was nothing. Almost. I'm Tessa Ward, 33, a freelance illustrator who works too many nights alone, painting strangers' faces for online commissions and listening to the house breathe. My place sat on Oak Ridge Lane, a quiet street where the most exciting thing was the weekly garbage truck or the occasional lost Amazon package. I liked it that way, predictable, boring, safe. My neighbor, Mr. Brantley, lived in the adjoining unit. Mid-50s, tall, lean, always tucked into collared shirts and pressed slacks even when mowing his lawn. He had this polite, old-fashioned way about him. He'd wave every morning at exactly 8:02 a.m. as I opened my blinds. Always the same motion, One slow wave, a nod, then he turned back to his garden. Routine, clockwork, comfortable, until the humming. It was late, maybe past midnight. I was sketching at my desk, half listening to a podcast when I noticed it. A soft, low tone, barely audible, threading through the floorboards beneath me. It wasn't mechanical, not the usual rattle of pipes or vents. It was rhythmic, like a voice holding a note that rose and fell, deliberate and alive. At first I thought it was my imagination. Too much caffeine, too little sleep. But when I pressed my ear to the floor, the sound grew sharper. It had direction. It came from under my apartment. The next morning I caught him in his yard. "Hey, Mr. Brantley," I called, trying to sound casual. "Do you have something running in your basement? I heard a weird humming last night." He looked up from his garden shears, smiling. "You probably hear my dehumidifier. Basements talk in old houses." I nodded, pretending to believe him. But something about that smile stretched a little too long, eyes too still, and made my stomach twist. The thing was, my unit didn't have a basement, and if his did, it shouldn't have been under my floor. That night the humming came back, louder this time, deep enough that the glass of water on my nightstand quivered. I covered my ears with my pillow, but the sound seemed to move through my bones. The next morning my cat Miso was gone. The window was still locked, food untouched. Her collar sat neatly on the counter. I searched the neighborhood for hours, calling until my throat hurt, but there was nothing. When I got home, there was a new doormat outside my door. Identical to mine, except for one thing. A thin red thread woven through the edge, subtle but deliberate, like someone had stitched it by hand. I assumed I was losing it. Maybe I swapped it by mistake. Maybe the landlord replaced them. But when I lifted it, the floor underneath was damp. Cold. The humming returned that night, faint but constant. I started sleeping on the couch with the TV on, the volume low enough to drown the sound without alerting my nerves. I told myself it was plumbing, or the wind, until the power went out. The whole block went dark. I lit a candle and sat by the window listening to the hum outside, louder now, bleeding through the walls like it was trying to reach me. Then through the rain I saw it, a faint yellow glow between our buildings, low to the ground, flickering like a lantern. When I stepped outside, the air smelled of wet dirt and something metallic. I followed the glow to where our foundations nearly touched. There, half buried under years of overgrowth, was a narrow door. Wood swollen from rain, its hinges rusted. The light came from beneath it, steady and pulsing like a heartbeat. My breath fogged in the cold as I crouched down. "Mr. Brantley?" No answer. Just the humming, louder now, clearly a voice. Curiosity overrode fear, a stupid reflex I wish I could undo. I pulled the door open. The smell hit first. Bleach, old wood, something sweet underneath. The light came from a single bulb hanging over a work table. The basement was immaculate. Shelves lined with jars labeled in precise handwriting. Ash, soil, thread, wax. Tools hung on the wall, arranged by size, gleaming under the pale light. The floor was spotless, concrete polished smooth, and in the center of the room stood a mannequin. It wore my favorite sweater, the gray one with the tiny paint stain on the cuff. Around its neck was Miso's collar. The face was covered in plaster, molded perfectly into my own features. My nose, my mouth, my half-smile caught mid-expression. Behind it hung rows of other masks, each slightly different, each bearing a faint trace of humanity. A chipped tooth, a faint mole, a curl of hair trapped in the plaster. Dozens of them. I stepped back, choking on the smell. Then came the humming again, but this time it was behind me. I turned slowly. Mr. Brantley stood in the doorway, holding a glass jar. Inside, floating in cloudy fluid, was a coil of red thread. "You left this on my doorstep, Tessa," he said softly. "I like keeping things neat." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The candlelight flickered across his face, and I saw something in his eyes. Not rage or madness, but pleasure. Familiarity. He took one slow step forward, still humming. "You shouldn't have come down here." I ran. I don't remember how. The next thing I knew, I was in my bed, daylight burning my eyes. My head pounded. My sweater was gone. So was my phone. The police said he'd moved away overnight. "Packed up quietly," one officer said. "No forwarding address." They found nothing in the basement, no mannequins, no jars, no door between our buildings. My friends told me I'd had a breakdown. Stress, isolation, imagination. I let them believe it because it was easier than the alternative. But at night, when the house is still, the humming returns. Softer now beneath the floorboards. Sometimes I wake to faint vibrations under my mattress, like someone pacing directly below me. Last week, I found a jar outside my door. No label this time. Just a coil of red thread floating inside. And last night, I heard my own voice humming with his. Same pitch, same rhythm, perfectly in sync. I tell myself it's a dream. I tell myself he's gone. But deep down, I know he's still keeping things neat. I stopped believing in God long before I started hearing his voice. For years, I thought faith was something that could be unlearned, that you could peel it off like old paint and throw it away. But faith is more like mildew. It waits in the dark until the air gets damp again. I learned that the hard way at St. Bartholomew's. My name is Megan Rourke, 30 years old, divorced, jobless, and lost enough to accept a janitor position at a church I hadn't stepped inside since college. I was a theology major once, back when I thought understanding God meant being close to him. Now I just understood silence. The church stood on the corner of Chestnut and Angel, its bell tower cutting into the Providence fog like a warning. Inside, everything smelled of wax and wood polish with that faint metallic tang that clings to old pipes and older sins. Father Alden was the first person I met there. Late 50s, kind voice, eyes too soft to be trusted. He shook my hand longer than necessary and said he admired people who served the church in practical ways. When he learned I'd studied theology, he asked if I'd been to confession lately. I told him I wasn't Catholic anymore. He smiled. The booth still listens, even if you don't. I laughed, but something in his tone stayed with me. Most nights I worked alone after evening mass. The church would empty, the doors would lock, and it was just me, the echo of my footsteps and the hush that settles when faith goes to sleep. I'd sweep the aisles, polish the pews, dust the gold-edged Bible by the altar. The rhythm was comforting. Clean, quiet repeat, until the voices started. The first night I heard them, I thought it was wind through the pipes, low, steady murmuring coming from the back of the sanctuary. I followed the sound to the confessional, the old wooden booth tucked beneath a stained glass window of St. Peter. The air near it felt thick, like breathing through velvet. The voices were soft, pleading, words slipping in and out of clarity. I crouched beside the door, listening. Forgive me. Please, forgive me. I yanked the door open. The booth was empty. My pulse wouldn't slow. I left the mop where it was and went home early, telling myself I'd imagined it. But the next night it happened again. Same hour, same tone. I pulled out my phone and started recording, pressing it against the door until my arm shook. When I played it back, the file was blank. Not silent, blank. As if it had been erased mid-recording. All that remained was a single whisper backward, distorted, stay. I deleted it, but I couldn't delete the feeling. The next morning I told Father Alden what I'd heard. He smiled, that same patient smile. Sometimes the church remembers voices long after they're gone. Buildings have souls too. You're saying it's haunted. I'm saying it's listening. He walked away, leaving the faint scent of incense and something sharper. Iron, maybe. Over the next week, the confessional became my obsession. I'd finish cleaning early just to stand near it, waiting for the murmurs to begin. They always came around midnight, just after the bell struck 12. The words were clearer now. Not prayers, not Latin, just confessions. I killed him. I buried her. Help me. Each voice sounded different, but the tone, the guilt, was the same. One night, I found a note tucked under a pew. Folded neatly, paper yellowed at the edges. On it, in neat handwriting, I know what you did. I froze. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it echo off the walls. I ran to the rectory, found Father Alden in his study. Someone's playing games, I said, shoving the note toward him. You need to check the cameras. He glanced at it, then at me. There are no cameras in the sanctuary. We believe in privacy here. That's insane. He smiled again. Some truths don't like being recorded. When I returned to my apartment that night, there was another note waiting under my door. Same paper, same handwriting, But this one was worse. You don't have to hide it anymore, Megan. I forgive you. I didn't sleep. Every sound, the radiator hiss, the ticking clock felt like a heartbeat, not my own. I tried to remember if I'd ever told Father Alden about my ex-husband, about the fights, about the restraining order that never got filed. But no, I'd never told him his name. The next evening, I found fingerprints inside the priest's side of the confessional. Fresh, deep grooves in the varnish, like someone had clawed at the wall. And the smell, sweet, rotten, metallic. I pushed open the divider. No one there. Just a small tape recorder still playing. The voice on it was male, trembling, broken, confessing to murder, naming the victim, describing the knife, the time, the blood. The name was Aaron Rourke, my ex-husband. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook so badly I dropped the recorder and the tape kept spinning, spilling words into the air like static. Behind me, a shadow stretched across the floor. Father Alden stood by the altar, eyes glazed, mouth curled in something like joy. "You came to confess at last," he said softly. "But I already forgave you." I stumbled back, heart slamming, words caught in my throat. I never. He took a step closer. "We're all guilty, Megan. The church only waits for you to admit it." Something in his tone shifted, too calm, too certain. His gaze flicked toward the confessional where the recorder still hissed. "He came here first, you know. Your husband. He begged to understand why you stopped answering his calls." I ran. I don't even remember getting home. The next morning I quit. I told the diocese I'd found another job, that I was moving out of state. They didn't ask questions. But I can't escape the sound. Every church bell that rings now, every Sunday sermon that leaks from a passing radio, carries it. The same whisper from that recording. Stay. Sometimes I hear my name woven into it, soft and patient like a hand resting on the back of my neck. Last week, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a folded sheet of St. Bartholomew's stationery. One line written neatly across the center. Confession hours never end. Now I avoid churches. I cross the street when I see a steeple, but it doesn't matter. The voice follows. Sometimes when I sleep, it hums through the walls like a prayer I once knew by heart. Sometimes it sounds like Father Alden. Sometimes it sounds like Aaron. And sometimes when I wake in the dark,